Hello and welcome to this SAM Project's Excel 4 video. Log into the SAM website and log in using your student ID. On the activity list view, you will see all the available projects that you can still submit. Find the Excel 4 project, select it. And you're allowed 5 attempts. This will be our first attempt. Hopefully we'll get it right. 1, 2, 3, download the instructions, download the start file, upload your work when you're finished. You've seen these in the previous videos. You can go back to the first or second video for Excel, and I'll talk about these in some more detail. I'll go through these pretty quickly at this point. Download the instruction file. At the beginning of the instruction file, it pulls up in protected view with the yellow bar. I'll say enable editing to remove the yellow bar. At the start of the instruction file are some housekeeping. To download the personalized start file with your name _1, change it to your name _2, and make sure that your name appears on cell B6 in the documentation page. So let's go back here and do those things real quick. Download the file. I'm going to change the file name here. However you change it, it doesn't matter. But I've got the _2. I've got it saved on my desktop, so I'll know where it's at when I submit from my desktop. And I'm going to confirm that on the documentation page in cell B6 it has my name. Okay, so we've done the bookkeeping and we're good to go. Let's work through this project together. Justin and Kaylin are always dreaming of purchasing and running a campground. Kaylin wants to be ready when the campground becomes available, so she decides to start calculating how the mortgage will impact her family's budget on a monthly basis and over the life of the loan. She also wants to consider how different mortgage rates will impact the total cost of the campground. This is actually a really good project looking at financials. Excel is great for looking at numbers and interest and payments, and this is a good project. I think you're actually going to enjoy working through this and see the power of Excel. So switch to the Campground Mortgage Worksheet. Let's go ahead and do that. Campground Mortgage Worksheet. And it tells us that in cell D5 to use the Pmt, the payment function, to determine the monthly payments for the associated campground mortgage. And payment function requires 3 arguments: rate, number of payments, and the present value, the amount you're borrowing. And they want us to use rate, the defined names, so we're going to talk about defined names, rate, terms, and loan for those. So in cell D5, so same thing. I have my yellow protected view bar across the top. I'm going to say enable editing. Can't make any changes until I do that. And now in cell D5, I'm going to use the Pmt function. So I say equals to get Excel's attention, then Pmt, the name of the function, and press a left parenthesis to start typing in the arguments. And I see that it's asking for 3 arguments: rate, in per, number of payments, number of periods actually, and present value. And it has 2 more arguments in braces that are optional that we're not going to do. The square braces mean that those are optional. 3 required arguments, 2 optional arguments. We're going to do the 3 required arguments. And our instruction document tells us that we want to use defined names for rate, terms, and loan amount, as opposed to typing in cell references. Now, defined names, I'm going to actually back out of this for just a second and show you what defined names are. So here is the price and the down payment, but look up here in this window, and I've already you can resize this to make it a little bigger, and I think I've already resized mine. When I select cell B5, it doesn't say B5 there. It gives me a defined name price, and it gives me a defined name for down payment. Now, it doesn't give me a defined name for cell B8. It's just B8, and G1 is just G1 and H1. But some cells, including D3, the rate, has defined names. And if I click the down arrow here, I can see that there are 5 cells that have been defined. If I click on like down payment, it jumps to cell B6. If I click on cell loan amount, it jumps to B7, and so on. Term years, it jumps to cell D4. So when we have a defined name like this, I can use either term years or I can use D4 exactly the same. And they're telling us to do the Pmt function and use the predefined terms. So for rate, I want to use the defined term rate. Okay, and as I start typing it, when I see that once I get the first 3 letters here, I see that there's only two options that begin RAT, or if I type RATE, I still have those same two options. Now, one of these has a little label by it, and one of these is a predefined function. I don't want the function, I want the label. So I can take that label option and select it. Okay. And then a comma. The number in per is the term years. So as I start typing it, eventually it gets to term years, and I can just double click that. And notice that it's highlighting cell D3 and cell D4 for me, just as if I had typed D3 and D4, but it's kind of like commenting or explaining the purpose of those cells. So it's a little more descriptive and easier to understand. The last one is loan amount. So I start typing loan amount, and eventually a label comes up. Now I can type it in as long as I get it exactly correct, or once I see it in the hint here, I can double select it from the hint. Now I don't want to, if I just say enter right now, I get the wrong value, right? Clearly my monthly payment's not supposed to be negative $39,000 a month. They're not going to pay me that amount, right? So it's negative. I want to make it positive, and it's certainly not supposed to be 39,000. So there's a couple of things that I need to do to get this formula right. They're telling us about this. First of all, putting a negative sign somewhere in the formula in front of one of the terms or in front of the payment sign itself. That'll make it positive. But more than that, the rate should be divided by 12 and the term years should be multiplied by 12, because these calculations are based on monthly calculations, and these are annual rate in annual terms. So let's just do that. Put a minus in front of the payment. The rate is divided by 12 because the 5.750% rate, that's an annual rate. Dividing it by 12, I get the monthly rate. And I'm doing 15 years, but I'm doing 60 payments, 15 times 12. I'm sorry, more than that. Doing 120 plus another bunch. So it's a significant number of years. A 5-year is 60 payments. 15 years is 3 times that, okay, 180 payments. So putting the minus 12 and the times 12 in there, then I get a much more reasonable $3,228.63 as my monthly payment. And in our instructions, if we go to the bottom of our instructions, we'll see our target solution, and I can see that $3,228.63, that's my goal there. I can see that in the solution, so I know I've got that formula typed in correctly. Step 2 says that Kaylin calculated the anticipated total cost of the campground using the mortgage interest calculation, the mortgage interest rate she expects to qualify for. In other words, she hopes to get that interest rate of 5.75. She expects to get that. But she wants to determine how different interest rate could impact the total cost of the campground. What if she gets a better rate? Or what if she has to pay a higher rate? How's that going to affect things? So we're going to do this by using the cell range A12 to A26 and fill in percentage series based on what's already there in A12 and A13. So A12 and A13 already has 3.5, and you go up by a quarter, 3.75. And we want to go all the way down to A26 and fill these in. And as I drag them down, Excel sees the pattern of adding 0.25% and adds another 0.25% as we go down. And I can go through the entire list all the way down to 7%. So she's going to see, Kaylin wants to understand, what if my interest rate was 3.5%? What if my interest rate was 7%? How's that going to affect my monthly payment, my total interest, and my total costs? And that's what we're getting ready to build out here. Step 3 says we want to create a single variable data table to determine the impact that the variable interest rate from A12 to A, and that says A22, that's actually a typo there, right? It's not A22, it's A26. So this doesn't really matter, but just so you know, that's supposed to be A26. That was a typo in the instructions. I'm just going to highlight that so that we see what's going on. She wants to know the impact of the variable interest rate on the total campground. So let's see what happens for each of those. In cell B11, create a formula using a function that references cell D5. So B11 should reference D5. B11 should reference equals D5. Okay, so that's the monthly payment. And B6 should C11 should reference D6. C11 should reference D6. And D11 should reference D7. D11 should reference D7. So we're getting this value from the monthly payment. We're getting this value from the total interest. We're just copying these values down because I want to make my little single variable, the one thing that's changing, that's variable or changing, is my interest rate, and I want to see the impact on these other cells. Select the range A11 to D26 and create a single variable data table using the absolute reference to cell D3 as the column input cell. So I'm going to select this range, right, the range from A11 to D26, which you're telling us to do, and then create a single variable data table where the variable that changes is D3, and D3 back here is our interest rate. So what if my interest rate right now, it's 5.75, which is right here, but what if my interest rate was 4%? What if my interest rate was 6% or 7% or 3.5%? We're going to fill this out with the single variable data table, and we do that using the data tab, I believe it is, under, data tab, under what if analysis. So under the data tab in the forecast group, underneath what if analysis, there's a data table, ... And I want to do a data table, and I'm only going to specify one variable is changing, and it's a column, because it's column A 12, 13, 14. It's this column that's changing. So I'm going to say that the column is going to change, and it's going to be use a new value for D3 to replace those column values. It automatically, if I just type D3 in there, it automatically gives me the absolute reference D3. If not, make sure if you do it by hand, type in an absolute reference to D3 and say OK. And what that does for us, it's kind of nice, is it fills in all these values. Now I already know that if I have 5.75, that my values are going to be, and this is what we have right here, 5.75, it's going to be 3,222.863, which I see right here, 1,935.420, which you see right here, and 6,734. But what if the interest rate had been 4%? Well, then my monthly payment would only be $2,800, and my total cost would be $600,000. But if it's 7%, my monthly cost is going to be almost $3,500, and my total cost is going to be $726,000. So this gives us a quick view of the impact of changing the variable rate, how it's going to affect our monthly payment, total interest, and total cost. To help Kaylin identify how each rate in her variable interest rate schedule compares to the interest rate she anticipates in her mortgage, she decides to highlight the matching interest rate in the schedule with a conditional formatting rule. So what we're going to do here is we're going to use a conditional formatting on the range A12 to A26, so that when the cell in A12 to A26 matches the value in D3, the expected interest rate, it will use a green fill, dark green text. So I'm going to highlight this range, and I'm going to go back to the Home tab and use conditional formatting to highlight cells when there's a specific value equal to. So highlighting the range A12, A26, conditional formatting, highlight cells equal to, and what I want to know is not when they're equal to necessarily exactly this value, but when they're equal to the contents of cell D3, because D3 may change over time. And I want to use the green fill with dark green text. So what that gives me is a visual identifier that says the value we're currently calculating is this 5.75, and it draws my eye to it here in this table, and I can see those same three values here are summarized for me here. But using this table, I can see how changing the interest rate a little lower or a little higher is going to significantly, or the significance of the total cost change, monthly payment changes. Caitlin now wishes to finalize the amortization schedule in cell J4, create a formula without using a function that subtracts I1 from H4. And they always word that awkwardly. Subtract I1 from H4, it means H4 minus I4. I was saying I1 there, I meant I4. but they always list the from first, so and so from this cell. So in J4, I'm going to type H4 minus I4. In cell J4, I'm going to type H4 minus I4, right? The beginning balance minus the ending balance, that tells us how much was paid on the principal, how much we still owe. And then copy that formula down, column J 5 to 18. Column J 5 to 18. And I can confirm by clicking here that I have the 18th row selected, so that's good. In cell K4, create a formula using the if function to calculate the interest paid on the mortgage, or if the difference between the total payments each year and the total amount of the mortgage principal paid each year. The formula should check if the value in cell H4, the remaining balance, is greater than 0. So this is going to be an if statement, because depending on our interest rate, we may pay this off sooner or later or something. So we're going to use an if function to make sure that the H4 value is greater than 0. And if the H4 value is greater than 0, the true condition of our if statement, then we're going to figure out, we're going to use this formula here, which is 12 times the D5 rate minus the amount we've paid. So let's look at that real quick. So if this value, H4, I'm pretty sure, yes, H4. So if H4, the beginning balance, is greater than 0, in this case, all the H4 values I can see, they're all greater than 0, but there can be a situation where we've paid it off earlier, done something. So we're just making sure. If H4 is greater than 0, then I want to use this formula, D5 times 12 minus J4. In other words, D5 is over here. This is what I'm paying each month, right? Times 12, so that's what I've paid for the year, minus J4, minus how much was paid on principal. So this is what I paid for the entire year, the monthly payment times 12. Some of that went to balance, some of that principal, and some of that went to interest. What didn't go to principal, what's left, goes to interest. So there's our formula. And by the way, since I'm getting ready to copy this formula down the K column, I want the J4 to become J5, J6, J7. I want the D5 to stay fixed. So I need an absolute reference there. So press F4 or type in the dollar signs manually so that the D5 stays fixed. Now the false, if the balance is 0, then the payment is 0 as well. So the false condition is just a 0. Copy this formula in K4 down to K5 to 18. So K4, copy it down, K5 to K18, and let go. Okay, and I can see that from the highlighting on the left hand that I have it all the way down. Step 7 says to apply the accounting number format with 2 decimal places and a leading dollar sign to K4, K18. So make sure I have all of K4, K18 selected, and then use the accounting style with 2 decimal places. So there's accounting. I can see that it's got 2 decimal places and a dollar sign leading it. If I wanted to dig into it deeper, I can click the more. I can see accounting, 2 dollar signs, so we're good. In cell K20, create a formula without using a function that references the defined name down payment. So in cell K20 right here, again, I can put the equal sign to get Excel's attention, and I'm just going to use the predefined variable, the predefined reference down payment. So I type that in and select it. So that is just a reference all the way back here to my down payment. Now you think, well, why do I do this in here twice? Because if I change it here, back in cell B6, I want that change to propagate itself to this amortization schedule as well. And I could have just said B6 there, but by using this named cell, it makes it unambiguous that I am in fact getting the correct value. I want to make sure I've got the down payment in here and not the price or the loan amount or the monthly payment or something else. So it's a way of adding clarity to your work, to use defined names that way. Kaylin decides to add custom cell borders to the amortization schedule to make it easier to read. Apply the custom cell borders with a specific color, green accent 6, darker 50%, 10th column, 6th row in the themes. So a specific color, and then apply a medium border to a certain range, apply a vertical light border to a range, apply a top light border and a bottom light border. If you scroll down to the figure, this is what it's going to look like. And I'm going to zoom in on this just a little bit. Okay, so this is what it's going to look like when we're done applying all the borders. A thick outside border, some vertical borders, and a horizontal border there, and a horizontal border there. But to get to that point, let's go through these instructions one at a time and knock these out. So, first of all, we're going to set the color of our border to be green accent 6, darker 50%. So we go back here, and this first border is an outside border along the whole selected area. The borders are here in the home group, in the font, the home tab in the font group. Here's our border, and I click the down arrow to get more information. And I can specify, for example, the line color. And I want the line color to be this accent 6, green, darker 50%, the very last one there. And I select that, and I can confirm that it's selected. When I go under line color now, notice that the accent 6 darker, it has that little box around it. You kind of see that little box around it there. So I know that I have the right color selected. Now I want to do more borders, and I want to specify for the outline, I want to use the medium. And the medium is, let me go back here and see where they tell us it is. The medium is second column, 5th row. Second column, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? So this is thin, medium, and thick, but I'm not getting a pop-up to tell me that. So I have to know it, or I'd have to make sure I get the 5th one in the second column. And because I'm doing the outline, I end up with that border there. Oops, I need to make it a little thicker too. Well, I thought it had a medium border style. Let me go back. Sorry, I don't think I did that right. I did not do that right. So let me select the border first, then click outline. Sorry, I did that backwards. You have to specify the border that you're using because I had the thin border before. Okay, so that's better. And that's a good point. When you're doing it, make sure you select the border drawing pin first and then apply it to where you want it to go. So I'll get it right on these next two. Add a vertical line border with the light border style, first column, 7th row, G3K21. So still have all of G3K21 selected. And then come down to the more borders, select the light style first, and then select the vertical style. Add a top light border, so with the light border selected, add a top border for J4K4. So select J4 to K4, and then come down, and with the light style selected, click a top border. Okay, and then add a bottom border with the light style for J18K18. So come down to J18K18, and with the light style selected, add a bottom border. Okay. So there we have what we're looking for. It looks like it's black almost on the screen, but it's not. It's that very dark green, dark 50% green. Step 10, to make various elements of the Campground Mortgage Worksheet easier to select and print, Kaylin wants to add custom names to ranges on the worksheet. So we've already seen some custom names that were pre-built. Now we're going to add our own custom names. We're going to call the range A2 to D7 mortgage payment. So I'm going to select that, say copy, and then select A2 D7, go back to my sheet. A2 D7, that entire thing, I'm going to create a custom name for that. Now the easiest way to do that is to just go into this name box area and type in the name. Now I've copy pasted mine, or you can just type it in. Make sure you use an underscore, not a space there. And you don't want to have a space at the end as well. So I'm typing in mortgage payment, and now what I see is in my list of named, so there's still the down payment we had before and the loan amount we had before, but there's also a named range mortgage payment, which is not a single cell, but a range of cells, the named range we just came up with. Let's do the same thing for interest rate schedule, which is A9D26. So A9D26. This is the interest rate schedule. Confirm that interest rate schedule shows that. Again, you can resize this if you're not able to see it. And if you're not able to read the whole thing, make it a little bigger so that you can see the names there. And then lastly, amortization schedule. G2 K21, G2 down to K21. This is the amortization schedule. Don't want the space at the end. So there's my amortization schedule. There is my mortgage payment, and there's my interest rate schedule. Step 11, assign names to the cells D5, D7 by selecting the range C5, D7, getting columns C and D together, and selecting names and creating names from the selection using the values in the left column for defined names. So here's what we're talking about. This cell D5 does not have a named range. It just pops up D5. Same thing with D6 and D7. But I know that D5 is referring to monthly payment. I know that D6 is referring to interest, and D7 is referring to total cost. So I want to do defined names here. And I could type these in by hand, or when you have labels to the left of your data, you can do it this way. You can select the cells and data, oops, remember where it's at. It's in formulas. So with C5, D7 selected, go to the Formulas tab, and there's a defined name in the Defined Names group. Create from selection in the Defined Names group. This is the one I want to do. I want to create it from the selection. And I pull Create from Selection, and it gives me a list that says, where are the names at that I'm going to use? And in my case, the left column actually has the names, monthly payment, total interest, and total cost that I'm going to use. So I select those, and now when I select on D5, it tells me monthly payment, tells me total interest, and tells me loan amount. Total cost, sorry. Kaylin wishes to protect the worksheet so that she doesn't make any accidental changes to the values. Protecting a worksheet, if you're going to share it with somebody, that's a good way that they can't mess up your formulas that are in there. However, she, since her assumptions about the price of the campground, the down payment, and the mortgage rate, they may be incorrect. In other words, the interest rate may change over time, the price may change due to negotiations. She wants to be able to update those values and protect in the protected worksheet. So she wants all the cells to be locked and unchangeable except those 3 cells. So the way you do it is you unlock these cells before you protect the worksheet. So D5, B5, B6. So B5, B6. Those two, price, down payment, and D3. These are the cells that we want to unlock. So let's just do B5, B6 first. The way we do this is we select those cells, and in the home group, in the home tab in the font group, click the More, and the tabs are number, alignment, font, and to the last one is protection. And by default, the cells are formatted to lock when the sheet locks. I'm going to unlock these 2 cells, B5, B6. I'm going to do the same thing for D3, home tab, font group, protection. I'm going to unlock it. And now when I lock this worksheet, those 3 cells will not lock with them. So going back to our instructions, we've unlocked that range, we've unlocked that cell. Now we're going to protect the Campground Mortgage Worksheet without a password. So going back here on the Campground Mortgage Worksheet, we're going to protect it, which is in the Review, Protect and Share, Protect Sheet. So Review tab, Protect Sheet. Check, yes, I want to protect the worksheet and the contents of the locked cells. We unlocked those 3 cells, so they're not going to be, but everything else will be protected. I have the option of typing a password here. Do not type a password. Just the default setting. I'm not going to change anything. I'm just doing protect sheet and saying OK. Now, what that means is if I want to come in here later and I want to change one of these values, so if you click on a cell and try to change it, you get an error message if you try to change any of these. But if you want to change one of the values that we typed in there that wasn't locked, you can. And I'm going to undo that just one time. So those cells are still editable, but everything else is uneditable. Only the 3 cells we unlocked. Kaylin had previously hidden a worksheet containing data on other recently purchased campgrounds in New Hampshire. Now she wants to compare the data in that worksheet with the data she just calculated. So unhide the Campground Research Worksheet. So go to the Home tab, and over in the Cells group there's a Format option. Under Format there's a Hide Unhide Visibility group, Unhide Sheet. And in this case there's only one sheet hidden to unhide the Campground Research. So I say OK, and now it adds this sheet that was previously hidden, but I can now have it alongside my Campground Mortgage, my Campground Research. Oops. Switch to the Campground Research worksheet. In cell B8 of that Campground Research worksheet, create a formula without using a function that determines the total interest associated with the mortgage. Do this by multiplying the value in B6, the number of terms, by the value in B7, the monthly payments, and then by 12, because you're making 12 monthly payments per year, and then subtracting that from the total loan amount. Okay, so in cell B8, it's a little complicated there, but let's type this. In cell B8 right here, we're doing a formula that multiplies B6 times B7 times 12. So B6, the years, times 12 times B7, the monthly payments. So 15 times 12 times 20, 15 years times 12 for how many payments that is, 180 payments, times $2,700 each payment, each monthly payment. A lot of money you're paying over time. And then we have to subtract B4 from that. So we do all those calculations and then we subtract the loan amount, and that'll tell us what our interest paid was. And by the way, the value here in B9, I should have pointed this out. This is, so the price of the loan is, for column C, it's $58,000, and the total cost is $58,000. $425,000, $425,000. This total cost is the price that you're paying plus the interest rate. So when we calculated this interest rate, this value in B9 went up from $500,500 to this new $62,000. We copy the total interest formula that we just calculated, copy that across, and all these values are about to change when I copy this across. And those all change to reflect the added interest, the original cost plus the interest. Step 15. Karen would like to be able to see the remaining balance on the campground mortgage at the end of the current year. In cell B11, create a formula using the PV or present value function to determine the outstanding balance on the campground at the end of the current year using the parameters below. So here in B11, we're going to use the present value function. So our arguments is going to include B5 divided by 12 to be the rate. The number of periods is going to be B10. Subtract the value of B10, the current year, from the value of B6, the total year. So we're going to figure out how many years are left by subtracting the difference in the years, multiplying that by 12. And then the payment parameter is going to be B7, and we're going to put a minus sign inside of that so that we get a positive result. Okay, so here we go. So equal the present value. First we do the rate, and the rate is this amount in B5 divided by 12 because we have a monthly payments, comma. Now our number of payments is based on years, but we're doing it at the end of the current year. So we've already had 5 years out of a 15-year total loan. So we're going to figure out years this way. It's going to be the years total minus the years we've already accomplished, right? And I'm going to multiply that by 12, but here's a key. You've got to put parentheses around that before you multiply by 12. You've got to figure out B6 minus B10 in parentheses. You got to do the subtraction first. And whatever that difference is, multiply it by 12 because you're doing monthly payments for the years that remain, comma. And then the payment amount is our monthly payment amount, B7. And I'm going to put a minus sign in front of B7 so that I have a negative, so I have a positive result when it's all said and done. The minus sign could have gone in front of the PV or in front of the rate, monthly payment, either way. Both are common ways of doing this. And I get a value, whoops, that's not quite right. That's too big. Or I think it's too big. Let me go down and look at my answers. No, that's right. 255,022.95. That's what I got, 255,022.95. Great. So we copy that across for all of our mortgage balance, what's left to pay off at the end of the current year. Copy that to C11 to E11. So our worksheet should look like this, and I think it does. So let's save this and submit it. So we're saving this, making sure that you have your name underscore 2. Now we go back to the web page and make sure you upload the correct file. Submit that. We should get our 3 check marks. That's a good thing. Let's go over to the Reports tab and let's find our Excel 4 report. Let's open that up. And we see that we got 100 out of 100.